Hi, I'm Ashley Cooley, a birth, baby, and sleep specialist and mom of three. There's so much information out there, right? This show is dedicated to helping you clear out the noise so you can figure out what will work best for your baby and your family. If you're looking to learn more about your baby, gain more confidence in your parenting, and get as much sleep as you can through it all, you've come to the right place. Bringing Up Baby is about to get a little easier. Hey everybody, this is Ashley. Welcome back to the Bringing Up Baby podcast. What a great episode I have for you today. If you are trying to conceive, you are pregnant or expecting, you have a new baby or babies, or your kids are even just a little bit older, this episode is for everyone. Relationships after baby is what we're talking about with therapist Madeleine Stobbe. And we get into some really, really great questions. Like I've asked her things about, what are the biggest changes couples face in the relationship? Why do even strong, healthy relationships feel strained during this time? What are some of the most common sources of conflict or disconnection among parents or new parents? Madeleine shares some really fantastic strategies on how to help couples stay connected and supportive of each other, whether, again, they're in the early days or trenches of newborn life or your kids are a little bit older. These are great at any stage. When we're expecting little ones, we got to think about the practical stuff, right? We need the car seat. We need a safe place for them to sleep. We need, those kinds of things. And we're planning and preparing for that. A lot of you are even coming to our classes, our prenatal classes, or doing lots of things to help you prepare for baby, parent your baby, your kids, what have you. But something that a lot of us aren't considering or talking about preparing for, let alone trying to troubleshoot or work on, are our relationships and how, we may feel less connected during this time with a new baby. How could we make sure we stay connected again? Gosh, there's so many good tidbits in this episode. We're just going to get right into it. But first, please allow me to introduce Madeleine Stobbe. She's a registered psychologist located in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, offering individual therapy services to youth over the age of 16 and adults residing in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. She provides specialized treatment for perinatal mental health issues, including depression and anxiety during pregnancy and postpartum, also known as perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, issues related to infertility, perinatal grief and loss, and reproductive trauma. She has a special interest in parental mental health and the challenges experienced by new and expectant parents during the perinatal period. And without further ado, here's Madeleine and I chatting about relationships after baby. Take some notes. Madeleine, what are some of the biggest changes couples face in their relationships after having a baby? Like, why do even strong, healthy relationships often feel strained during this time?
Mhm. So that is a great question. And I would argue that almost every relationship is going to struggle after having a baby and during this transition. I'd say the biggest thing I see is, obviously, when you have a baby, there's a lot of changes, but there's a huge relationship dynamic shift that happens at that time. So again, it's one chapter of a relationship. And typically what happens, as anyone with a baby knows, is you have less time for the relationship. Your time and energy is going into baby. Most people are feeling pretty sleep deprived, tapped out. Nobody really shows up as the best version of themselves during that time.
Mhm.
And we kind of lose all the things that sort of are the like the protective factors of mental health. So any sort of self-care, personal time, time to connect as a couple. So as we kind of lose all that, it makes it harder for us to show up, in the
Yeah.
relationship. Mhm.
Yeah, I know. I can say that I felt like our relationship was nice and strong and good and solid going into having children. Um, Maybe we'll touch on this, or maybe it'll be another episode sometime, but the trying to conceive and the struggle there, I think is maybe where some things start because you're just, even though you're not pregnant yet or having a baby, but you're just focused on this baby and having the baby. So do you have clients that are trying to conceive and that are noticing shifts in their relationships too?
Absolutely. Especially, I think anyone who's struggling with infertility as well, or even, I mean, even just that sort of trying to get pregnant, because I think, I mean, obviously for a lot of people, physical intimacy is a really important part of connecting in their relationship. Um, and I find, I mean, obviously, when you are trying to conceive, there can be a lot of tracking, whether it's through ovulation tests, pregnancy tests, temperature monitoring.
Mm,
And so that also puts a lot of strain on couples, as it sort of takes that spontaneity and way to connect, it becomes something else that you're working towards.
mm,
Um, and then I think too, sometimes, not for everybody, but I think sometimes there's so much sort of pressure, especially if the couple's struggling to conceive, there's sort of this pressure on the outcome. So obviously wanting to get pregnant, wanting to have a baby, and then when baby's here and they start to struggle, that can also be challenging, a
yes.
couple, and especially if, I mean, even if you have, let's be real, the best communication with your
Yeah.
partner, it's still really difficult when there's sort of that shift after baby comes, to feel supported, to feel connected,
Mm,
and for most couples, the relationship kind of takes the back burner, because
mm-hmm.
you have all these other little fires that you need to put out.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing too, I should mention, I think, especially for, the primary parent that's home with the baby too, let's say you have, I think the barnacle baby, that idea where they're just sort of attached to you or carrying baby all day. But at the end of the day, most people feel pretty touched out, tapped out.
Mm,
So if your
mm-hmm.
partner comes to try and connect, this can be another challenge where, primary parents like, don't touch me, get away from me,
Yes.
parent that's come home from being away all day is missing their partner,
Yeah.
might
Yeah.
not understand that.
Oh my gosh, I can remember so many days just like waiting by the door or like looking out the window at that time when you expect them to come home. And maybe prior to baby, it was like, oh, look, I look forward to him getting home and we'll hug and we'll connect. But then it's just like, take the baby. I need to go have a minute to myself. So you're right. It's so, especially that newborn phase, it's so all-encompassing with just figuring out whether it's your first child or it's not, it's your second or third, but now we're busy with other kids happening too. So it is a lot. So we do talk about, we want people to be aware of this, but we also maybe want to see what kinds of things are actually happening in relationships. Like, what are some of the most common sources of conflict or disconnection for relationships?
Mm, right. Well, I think so I mean, right. So especially if we're talking about the newborn stage, because it doesn't matter if you're a first time parent or second time, third time parent, because like you said,
It's a shift. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And so I think this part, like first time parents, where there's so much stress about trying to figure it out. And I think too, you know, sometimes sort of, I see this a lot with prenatal or postpartum anxiety, where there can be, become such a fixation on routines, right? And I think the desire for most people to have a routine, I think for most people, we feel, positive mental health. We feel happy, we feel content when we know what to expect, when we feel accomplished, when we feel like we have a routine or an understanding of what's happening. And
Mm,
the newborn kind of throws all of that out the window,
mm,
So I think there's a lot of that challenge of, what we're expecting, sort of the pressure that puts, on the relationship, on the person. And if there's sort of this focus on it needs to be done a certain way, or I just need to sleep, that can cause tension in the relationship. Um,
mm,
I mean, I think getting back to that shift in dynamic, like a lot of sort of that source of conflict is when the relationship takes the back burner. Because
mhm,
again, there's so much that's going on that I think there's, a lot of people don't feel seen or feel connected with their partner. Energy that might have previously gone into date nights, or I mean, like you said, these sort of rituals we have of reconnection at the end of the day with our partner, is now maybe, I mean, I had many days similar where I'm just like by the door and it's 5:01 and I'm getting really antsy
You're
because
late.
it's too late and I need to pass this off. Like again, like I'm tapped out,
Yeah.
I'm done. I just need a break,
Mm,
And so, I mean, I think there's so many of these little moments that we lose with our partners, that we don't necessarily realize are important. right? Like I think,
Mm.
I mean, I saw this a lot necessarily with couples, but I think, when COVID happened and there was so many people were struggling and there were so many that shift from working from home, right? Because I think so many
Yeah.
people, there's all these tiny rituals that we have, the getting ready, the getting a shower, making our coffee, listening to the podcast or music, that again, we didn't necessarily know were tied to feeling better. And so I think this happens a lot with relationships, all these tiny ways that we've been putting, positive energy into reconnection get lost because people are feeling so exhausted.
Mm.
Um,
And I don't even think there's like, at least not for me. Of course, I'm not a psychologist, so I don't talk to a lot of people about this specifically, but I can't speak for him, but for myself, like I wasn't even consciously thinking about our relationship, if I'm being totally honest. I don't know if I'm alone in that or not, but it was like, hey, we're just like surviving the days. We're trying to get sleep. We're thinking about food. It's all like, okay, who needs to buy the diapers? Like it's all that um quote unquote kind of roommate stuff, I guess. There may be little moments here and there, but it wasn't even really at the forefront of my mind that this is something that I should be even thinking about. Do you find that to be the case with
Absolutely, and you are not alone in that. I think,
yeah,
and I think especially, in North American culture, we're a very individualistic culture, right? So this
yeah,
idea where, I mean, in other cultures, it would be unheard of that, the parents leave the hospital with baby and go home alone to figure it out, right?
right,
Because I think,
right.
I mean, exactly like you're describing, is most people get thrown into this survival mindset. Right?
Hmm.
You're not, and if we look at the hierarchy of needs, the relationship becomes like very back burner because it's like, have I eaten? Have I peed today or this morning?
Mm. Hmm.
Or if you're so tapped out and that's like, I just need a break, that's going to come first, then sort of that reconnection. And I think also too is that some couples you might be spending a significant amount of time together, but in a very passive or, like you said, sort of roommate task management kind of way.
Yeah.
So this also comes up when if one partner's feeling really disconnected, and it's like, oh, well, we spend time together every night, and spending, I'm using air quotes, spending time
What,
together.
yeah, what does that look like? Yeah.
Right. That might be you're both sitting on the couch, passively scrolling or on your respective phones, watching a show together, but not really. Or you're spending all day in the house together while one's getting diapers and one's changing baby. And, so there could be a lot of time together, but it's not that intentional time that we need.
Mm.
Or,
Mm.
and I think too, this sort of, you know, like you said, like this very common, whereas maybe before there was an intentional, like, oh, I want to talk with my partner, I want to make sure I'm making space or having date night, you know, that's sort of lost because that energy has to go elsewhere in this chapter. And I think a lot of people sort of lose sight that this is temporary. Yeah.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
also this,
that's what I was gonna ask you. Like, is it's got to be somehow common or normal or expected that there are going to be phases or stages or chapters in our lives where that may be the case. So, because the last thing that I want to do, I'm sure I'm thinking maybe you're the same, Madeline, is like putting pressure on parents that, like, oh, wait, you got a new baby, but wait, don't forget about this. Like, you got to keep, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, what are some strategies that can help couples stay connected and supportive of each other in those early months when we're not always thinking of each other every day?
Right. And I mean, and I think it's that loss of a team too, right? Because I
Yeah.
think this, those early days, I mean, back to the survival mindset is you're just trying to get stuff done, but it sometimes can feel almost like you know, that frustration with your partner, or they're not doing it the right way, or they relate again, or this, sort of assumptions that start to brew in our head.
Hmm.
And often when I'm working with clients, I mean, I almost always use, well, with any client, but especially postpartum and prenatal, is that sort of reframe of chapters or seasons of our lives, right? And I think this is also applicable to relationships because even like prior to baby, if we look at most relationships, You're going to have those early relationship moments where it's exciting. You can't stop thinking about them. You're putting so much energy in, and that also doesn't last, right? That goes to another chapter. Maybe there's shared interest, ways to spend time together, you know. So I think in this chapter is having, I mean, a couple things. So I think having realistic expectations of what putting time and energy into the relationship is, right? Because I think, I don't know, speaking for myself, a lot of my clients, most of my friends, like it is unrealistic that you are going to be able to maintain some semblance of a date night or even want to have a date night. Because when it becomes dark or baby's asleep, maybe all
It's,
you
it's
want
bedtime.
bedtime or you want
Not
to
a
veg
date.
out on the couch, watch your
Yeah.
show. The idea of leaving the house, going out for, I mean, again, for most people, that is not how you feel connected in this chapter,
Okay.
right? And so I think to your point, like, absolutely, we don't want to put pressure on parents or anybody that it's sort of like this, these are the ways you feel connected with your partner. So you have to go out and have a date night.
Right, right.
But yeah, so I think, I mean, so a couple of things, I guess, to get back to your question of how people can stay connected. So, I mean, I think one place to start is, I mean, so let's say there's some sort of conflict in the relationship, and unless this is a situation, obviously it's different if there's any type of abuse, like emotional, physical, anything happening. Like if this is a safe, healthy relationship, whenever we have those sort of struggling thoughts about, someone not doing something or again, this idea of feeling disconnected or your partner doing something or saying something is most times your partner is not trying to be malicious, right? So if we're looking at any of these kind of conflicts, whether it's the dishwasher being loaded the wrong way again or something not being done, again, a lot of times people are just trying to do the best that they can with the resources they have in this chapter, which then leads to, I think, the most important part, which is communication,
Hmm.
right? And so I think most people, when you're tired, when you're stressed, you don't show up as the best version of yourself because nobody does, you
Yeah.
know? So I think this is the time where it's helpful to have those moments where you're able to prioritize connecting with your partner. And so again, I guess a couple, and so I'll just sort of jump into one thing I often recommend, and this is a handout that I believe is on my website. If not, I'll double check that it is. Um, and so this is something called State of the Union. So this is something I recommend to most clients who are struggling, especially when there's that feeling of disconnection, right? Um, Again, the idea of the State of the Union is a quick check-in. It could be as short as 5 minutes. It could be open to a larger conversation. But the idea is to start to intentionally have conversations about the relationship that are realistic for this chapter, right? Because, like I
Okay.
said,
Okay.
it's unrealistic that there's going to be all this time and space. Um, so I'll just quickly go through the questions.
Yeah.
And again, this is not an opportunity to be like, here's my shit list for the week of things that we do, not a place to use you
That's a different
statements.
meeting. That's a different meeting.
Right. You can have those meetings, but those aren't going to be very fruitful. So again, one thing to point out, what is something that's going well in our relationship? So again, this is trying to build in those positive moments of connection. You know, I know that both of us are really tapped out, but I feel like we're really good at just like taking space, or I feel like we're doing a great job of keeping this baby alive. Like neither of us really knew what to do,
Hmm.
or, we haven't run out of milk for the past month. That's amazing. Something that, again, you feel is going well. It can be emotionally, it can be physically. Number two, what's something that I'm having difficulty with in our relationship? Again, not a you statement situation, but more what are the ways I'm feeling disconnected? I'm really missing you. I feel like we don't have that time, or I'm really struggling when I'm frustrated to say how I'm feeling in that moment.
Hmm.
And it's opportunity to say, like, these are places where, like, I feel like we don't have any time for ourselves because we're taking care of the baby. Uh,
Mm.
the last one, what is something that you, so you're telling your partner, have done recently that helped me feel loved, cared for, or connected? So again, this is the opportunity to almost have, it's like that positive reinforcement. When you got to work and you knew I had a shit night with, am I allowed to swear on this?
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Okay,
please.
perfect.
It's a parenting podcast. Why can't it? Of course.
Yes, exactly. I swear a lot with my clients. So just when it comes out, I had a shit night with the baby last night. I couldn't sleep. And when you sent me that little text to check in the morning, like that meant the world for me. Or when you came home and you took baby, but you made sure to give me a quick kiss, before I left, like that was the way I really felt connected. Because I think,
Mm.
again, these are the helpful things for couples because you don't have time to go for date nights. You might not have time to be physically intimate in the way that you want to, but these are ways that you can kind of try to stay connected.
Cool. And it's one thing to notice that connection, like you said, oh, when you took the baby, you came home and took the baby, gave me a quick kiss, and I noticed that, and that made me feel good. But then it's another thing to actually tell your partner that, so that potentially they're not walking around thinking like, what are they thinking about? Are we still connected? Like, so having those conversations. So are we talking like once a week? Do we need to put a timestamp on it? Like, how often should we be doing this kind of check-in?
So, I mean, typically that's what I would recommend is that like having prioritizing like once a week. And again, it can be, on the weekend or a day that both of you are home where it's like, okay, we set the alarm and it goes off after dinner. And we just, again, we print off the sheet, have it on our fridge, and we just like quickly go through it. You know, again, I find it helpful to have like some sort of like timestamp or set thing in the calendar because again in this chapter what's going to be forgotten about and not
Mm.
done is anything to do
That's
with
that,
the
that's an easy
relationship.
thing to again put on the back burner. Yeah.
Right, because
Mm.
it's not a crisis. It's not, I mean, and I think this is how the relationship kind of slides, right? Is that it's deemed, air quotes, not a priority because baby just spit up again and now I got to do another load of laundry or now they're teething and I know I'm not going to sleep so I'm going to lay down on the all of the things that are very real, right? It's not like none of these things are in someone's head, like there's tangible things that we have to do,
Hmm.
but I think it's so important to still try and find a way to put that energy in. So I think that's why, yes, I would recommend like having a set time. And again, it can be 5 minutes, it can be focusing on a couple of the questions, and especially that way to feel connected. Because like you said, I mean, I think I would argue like a human condition that we have very active brains and imagination. So he texted me and, I sent him a text back and was like, smiley face emoji or something. Like, how does he
Hmm.
not know that that's what I need every day? Like, that was amazing. But
Hmm.
no one is a mind reader, right? So I
Hmm.
think this is where that intentional and I mean, communication is so important because, again, I think if we share that more with our partners, if we let them know this is how I feel connected, is then that kind of opens that opportunity to having those conversations and vice versa, right? Because you also, we make a lot of assumptions, this
Hmm.
sort of leads into the other sort of quick, well, maybe not quick, but like another area where couples can focus is how we feel connected, right? So, so for me, I feel connected. My love language is quality time. So if my partner and I get to go out for a walk with the dog together and we talk, if we have a family trip to go apple picking or we do something together, that is how I feel connected, you know.
Hmm.
But it's
Hmm.
also unrealistic to assume that my partner's like, oh, this is exactly what Madeline needs. I can read her mind, and she's feeling emotionally connected to me right now.
Mm, yeah.
And
Yeah.
or also but for me to assume like, well, I feel really connected to him right now because we're on this walk, so he must feel the same way.
Mm.
No.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so the love languages quiz or book, a lot of people are familiar with them. So this, again, I'm not quite sure about the research behind it or any sort of validity or reliability there. However, I love using it in therapy because I think it gives couples a tangible way to talk about how they feel connected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
What if they don't have the answers? Not that like here's what I'm thinking. We have this sort of state of the union. We're asking each other questions. We're talking about things, and we maybe both are in the same boat in terms of like, I'm feeling less connected, things we feel distant, not so great. I know with those other questions, I think maybe that's going to be part of the answer is that you are still bringing in some really positive things around it. But like, do we need to come up with solutions? Are we okay to just sit in the, oh, I guess we're both feeling this way right now? Oh well,
Mhm.
like where do we go from there?
All right, and just sort of sink into the hopelessness of
Yeah. All right, I guess we're going down this road. All right, have a good day.
Right. Oh, we both feel disconnected. Great. See you next
Yeah.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Um, right. So, I mean, again, I think part of this, what is helpful is the voicing it, right? Because I think when stuff is in our head and we don't give voice to it, is I think that's when it starts to percolate, when we start to maybe ruminate on things. So I think getting it out in the open can be really helpful. Also, I find
Hmm.
it can be really validating when you hear like, oh, like you're also feeling really lonely, or I thought it was just me, because it also helps us have empathy when maybe like in that situation we are feeling so tapped out.
Yeah.
Um, and I think this is where, I guess if it's tangible pieces, like back to the love languages quiz, I think this is where it can be helpful. Because I mean, if you literally just Google it, there'll be, quizzes online and it will ask very directed questions, like which would you rather, have your partner come home with, this meaningful gift for you, or receive the text like, I love you so much in the morning, or it'll sort of go through these things. And so it sort of gives us tangible, and at the end it'll say like this is most likely how you feel connected to your partner,
Hmm.
so that can be really helpful. And again, mixing those two together is that then it can sort of invite this conversation. So let's say I'm feeling really disconnected, you're also feeling really disconnected. What do we do about that? You know,
Hmm.
one
Hmm.
thing might be finding a therapist would be helpful if that's something that like,
Hmm.
would help you also prioritize the relationship, because now we have a session booked once a week to talk about how to connect.
Mm.
Um, the other thing too is often if we blend sort of the State of the Union of talking about it and then also the love languages quiz, where this can be helpful, is it sort of invites them, okay, so maybe I'm going to make a list. These are the ways, like the top 5 things I can think of. Like back to the last question, what's something that your partner did that made you feel connected? I'm going to come up with a list of things. Partner does the same thing. And again, we are not talking about like when you came home with this extravagant thing or you took me out. Like we're talking something that's realistic, back to having realistic expectations in this chapter, right? So
Hmm.
it's, these are the things that you can try to do each day, right? And so this would be something I'd recommend, for couples to do, where it's like you both make a list of something that seems realistic, give it to your partner, and then throughout that week, have your partner pick away at the list, things that seem realistic for them to
Hmm.
do,
Hmm.
right? And also recognize that maybe it's out of your comfort zone, because maybe you aren't a words of affirmation person that like is able to reach out and say, I love you, or I really like this, thing that you did. Like that feels uncomfortable.
Mm.
But it's also like that window of tolerance, finding a little bit of discomfort because this is how your partner's going to feel connected to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And vice versa.
I was just thinking when you're saying like bringing home something extravagant, it's like before baby, it might have been like, oh, look at this. I
Mhm.
don't know. This is not what my husband did, but like, look at this beautiful jewelry you just brought me home. Like, oh my goodness. But then with kids, it's like you fall all over them for in the same way, but it's like, oh my God, you got the diapers and I was on the last one. Like, thank you so much.
Yes,
It's such a
exactly.
different twist, but it can still
Right.
have the
Or
same effect.
yeah, I find a lot of clients and myself included, like it's a hot beverage or a cold beverage in the summer
Hmm.
when it's like, you got me that coffee, that you knew that I loved. You didn't ask if I needed one, you just picked one up on your
Mm.
way home.
My love language is donuts. When my husband comes home with donuts, like the fancy, like the fun donuts, oh,
Oh, yes.
I'm
Yes.
good. I'm good to go. Oh,
That's my kids' love language too, is
is
any kind of sweet
it?
treat. Hmm.
Oh, donuts. Okay, off track. Okay, so if parents are listening and feeling distant right now with their partners, what's one step they can take today to begin reconnecting? Would that be
Hmm.
the communication? Like, would that just be like, hey, let's maybe take some time? Is there something else?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be mostly the communication, but I mean, again, I think the most helpful reframes in this chapter, because there is a lot going on, right? And we can assume that both partners are feeling equally tapped out. This is new territory for both of you, and also like in different chapters of parenthood, that looks different, So I think the communication, the communication is a key part. And I think that I guess that remembering that this is a temporary chapter and connecting with your partner and your relationship is going to look different right now.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean anything, doesn't mean that the relationship's doomed, doesn't mean that you're never going to be able to feel that intimacy with your partner again. It just means right now you're in a survival chapter and you're doing the best that you can with the resources that you have. And again, back to our North American culture, which it puts so much pressure on the couple, right? You have
Mm-hmm.
to be the friend, the romantic partner, the co-parent, the, fun activity planner. There's so much that gets put on them. And especially if you don't have a support system, that's going to be very difficult. You know,
Yeah.
so again, I think this part where it's like, if we recognize it's a temporary chapter, let's have some realistic expectations and know that your partner is not a mind reader. Would it feel amazing if our partner knew exactly what we needed when we needed? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And also we can recognize that they're not going to know what we need unless we start to communicate. Also if there's something that's being said that you're like, I know that you're just joking around when you say that, but actually it really doesn't feel good for me. So I think any of those like communication with your partner is going to be so important right now. And
Mm-hmm.
also that
Mm-hmm.
it's temporary. You are
Mm-hmm.
not going to feel the sleep deprived, tapped out, frustrated forever
Mm-hmm.
if that is your experience, which obviously it's not everyone's experience.
Yeah.
And so again, I think back to that point of having something tangible, and you don't have to do both. Maybe you start the State of the Union, you're like, nope, we don't have time for this right now. Maybe we're just gonna like do the love languages quiz online when I'm, a contact napping with the baby, or as
Mm-hmm.
we're on the respective sides of the couch, pretending that we're watching a show together
Mm-hmm.
on our phones.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
that's all you have for brain power at that moment.
How much of this do we, because often talk about this, it all goes together, whether it's our individual selves or the relationship that we're in as parents. But like the one thing that your baby needs to be a well-rounded, healthy individual is a healthy and happy parent. And I think specifically it even goes to mom, right? In research would say like if mom is doing well, baby can too, but like any secure attached individual. So I talk a lot about in prenatal class how we need to think about ourselves and putting our mask on. Self-care is not selfish, like doing those things for you. And so tying this in with the relationships, again, it's these are just things I can look back on and think of now bringing it up. I know what it feels like so overwhelming and there's so many things to do and think about, baby aside. But how much of this is us making sure that our personal individual needs are being met and so that we can be there for our partner too? Because I can remember those early days, weeks, when I'm at home all the time with the baby or the kids and my partner gets to go out to work and he doesn't know how amazing it is to get out and go to work. As much as I want to stay home and be with the kids, it's also like you get to be like your adult self for a few hours of the day and then come home. And so there can be this misunderstanding of roles and things like that. So what kinds of things can couples sort of do there? Are we trying to put ourselves first, then the relationship? Is it the relationship, then us? Like where this could be a whole other
Mhm.
episode, I think. But like what are your thoughts on that?
If only there was like one easy equation we could plug that
Right?
into. It could
Why
be like,
isn't there?
which do we, right? Well, we're not robots, so there's your
Yeah.
first answer. But I mean, I think you brought up an important part too when there's, I don't know if it would be called jealousy or envy. Like, I remember the same thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
my partner gets to go to work and use his brain in a different way. He gets to have hot coffee that he doesn't forget about in the microwave 3 times to reheat it. He has adult conversations. He doesn't
Can
repeat,
go to the bathroom solo. Like
right?
so many things.
Right. Gets to wear clothes other than like the spit up loose
Yeah.
shirt that I'm not changing today because it's just gonna get spit up on again.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, for the partner that leaves the house, goes to work, comes home, and, and this, again, these are just sort of, generalizations. This is not everyone's experience, but sometimes there can be such disconnection because they're gone and all they want to do is reconnect with their partner or,
Mm, mm,
support, come in and help with baby. And especially if, if it's a mother who's breastfeeding, let's
mm-hmm,
say,
mm-hmm,
or, again, there's certain things where if there's two kids in the house and partner who leaves has to pick up toddler from daycare and get dinner ready. Again, sometimes there can be, on one hand, like the sort of envy of the partner that didn't get to leave the house all day and is dying
mm-hmm,
to leave the house. And
mm-hmm,
also the sort of disconnect from the partner coming home, being like, well, I can't really do anything or I don't feel helpful, or I had a
mm-hmm,
long day and all I want to do is relax too.
mm-hmm.
And then it becomes this like, now we're not a team anymore. Now we're just sort of butting heads of this like, suffering competition of,
We're out for ourselves and what each
yes.
we each need individually and not looking at that
Exactly.
relationship.
And I think to your point is that sometimes it's not so clear cut, right? You're like, I know that I need to check in with you and your needs, and I know that you're struggling, but I'm operating at like a 1% in my battery, and I need to focus on myself, and it's not, sometimes it's clunky, sometimes it doesn't work out perfectly, and that's because we're humans and relationships, don't follow a specific equation, but I think this part where there can be, and I think this is where, I mean, I guess back to that importance of communication, because if we spend too much time internally, that story might become, well, he came home from work and all he said was he was tired and he doesn't even know how much I did today. And now here I am and I'm fine, I'll do dinner and I'm gonna like slam around in the kitchen. Now there's this narrative being created about your partner or
Mm,
what the relationship means. Like we're never gonna survive this, or here's this new story that I'm telling about the relationship,
mm,
and again, I think that part where in, having those conversations with your partner, the communication, the check-in, is that sometimes there's not going to be an answer because what you
mhm,
need is like 5 more hours in the day or an extra day a week to get stuff,
mhm,
which you can't do,
mhm,
but I think that holding space of like your partner's not the enemy. You're in a difficult chapter, resources are tapped, and you're gonna get through this to the other side together.
mm.
But it's just finding that way to like infuse a little bit of hope, infuse a little bit of connection to kind of get you through.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I just keep going back to what you said earlier, how we all come home from the hospital, not all of us, but a lot of us in our culture, and it's just like, okay, have at her, and you're not coming home to a community. You're not coming home to your village. You're not coming home to, and we need that support to even be able to think about the relationship more than we're not. So I'm glad that your belief of like we don't have to have the answers all the time, but if we can at least communicate where we're at, maybe we get some empathy or a sense of like, oh, okay, like you're there too, or maybe, oh, you're not, but now you're aware of where I'm at. That sounds like it can make a really big difference.
Right. And I guess just one thing on that too, where I mean again, and it's not everyone's experience. Some people have great support systems or parents that come and stay with them, but I think especially for people who don't have family nearby or have strained relationships and have very good reasons why their family is
Mm,
involved,
mm-hmm.
again, it can be so much pressure and nobody gets a break, right? And so I
Mm,
think one thing that I often recommend too, and for both partners, I do this a lot in individual therapy, but this idea of a break, right? Because I think if we're, what would be great is like, yeah, I'd love to go back to that yoga class that I did on Tuesdays and Thursdays and have this evening free. Or maybe partners like, yeah, I want to be able to, go golfing every weekend because that was where I could clear my mind. I connected with friends. And again, maybe that's not realistic in this chapter, and you're allowed to feel frustrated about that. However, is there a way to build in breaks? So is it like, okay, we're going to pick one evening a week where one partner leaves the house and, for this 2 hour window, or is it taking turns on the weekend where it's like, partner that's working is going to be with baby overnight,
mm-hmm.
or somebody gets, and again, this looks very different whether there's breastfeeding involved, whether there's, difficulties with sleeping overnight, any of that. However, prioritizing those little breaks for both partners, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
think that's
Mm-hmm.
the other part where it's like when we get so caught up in this, like we got nobody else, there's no one to watch baby, we're never going to get this date together, is having like little windows where you each can take time. So at least there's like a little bit of a recharge built in.
Nice, nice. So you can have both looking after yourself and communicating and having that connection with your partner. My partner and I, for the longest time, when whether it was just one, two, or th all three kids, we would trade off on weekends. So like he would have maybe Saturday as a sleep-in day, and I would have Sunday. So we knew that the other parent was like on tap and getting up with the kids, and just having whether I was sleeping during that time or just hanging out quietly in my room and everyone thinking I'm sleeping during that time, it was so nice to not have, just to have that kind of in place, I guess, and to know that each week you know that you're going to have that to look forward to. So as much as sleep or things get disrupted, you're like, I'm going to get Saturday night though, and I can't wait for that. So still
Absolutely.
having like a stand-in date with yourself is really
Yeah.
helpful.
And I would also argue it's good for the relationship too, right? Because I think
Yeah.
what happens is when we're feeling resentment starts to build when it's like, I've had no breaks, there's nothing on the horizon, so I often think those little times like that sleep in, and my partner and I had the same thing where I was like, with my daughter, she was bottle fed. So overnight, I would get one evening a week where I would put my earplugs in, I'd turn on the fan, I'd turn on the sound machine, I'd like barricade myself in a room that was nice and I couldn't hear the crying, and I would just have a solid sleep. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, that was my like beacon of hope to get through the week because
Mm-hmm.
we could have shit sleeps the whole week and that would still suck. That would still be very difficult. However, I knew I just got to make it to Friday because when
Yeah.
Friday comes,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have that. And also with that, like protecting time, like you said, like whether you were sleeping or not was kind of irrelevant,
Yeah.
because what you're doing is you're protecting time,
Mm,
And so again, I obviously that's for self-care, but I would argue that's good for the relationship too, because it's gonna like reduce some of that pressure of like, well, you get to go to work all day and I'm home and I don't get a break, and this is so unfair and it's frustrating,
mm,
you know, so that when you have that time and clients will ask me like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't want to join a club, or money's tight. And again, the what is really irrelevant. Like whatever you
mm,
choose to do, you could sit in your driveway in your car and listen to music or do nothing. Just sit there, make a coffee or a tea, go out there and have alone time. You could be
mm,
pretending to sleep and just having that time knowing that nobody is going to ask anything of you because that's your protected time.
mm.
So again, I
That's
think,
what I've heard someone say that before. It's not so much about having time to yourself, but it's like n nobody needs you time.
mm,
Their needs are all being met with other people or somebody else. And you can, because that's when, like, I can't have a quiet moment if my kids are playing in one room. I'm like, oh, they're quiet. So now I'm going to take some time. But at any second, they could start crying or they'll need something. And so you can only relax so much in those moments.
yeah. And
Yeah.
for a lot of people, a trigger is being interrupted, right? So that idea of,
Oh.
okay, like I'm going to read a book or I'm going to get into something or I'm going to focus on a task, and then that act of being interrupted of mom, can I get a snack? Oh, I dropped this. We need help. Like, it can be so
Mm,
triggering, for lack of a better
mm.
word, and frustrating for people. So again, I think this part when it's like, and I mean, this can also be built into any of those check-ins with your partner. Like, and all of this is an experiment, right? Because I think this a lot of times when people are like, well, is this going to work? Is it, I don't know what's going to work for everyone. You don't know what's going to work for you because a lot of people, again, in this chapter have never been first-time parents or second time or third time, right?
You gotta trial it out. Yeah.
Exactly. So part of this is the experimenting. Okay, let's try Friday night. Oh, that was a gong show. Let's shift that. Or we thought we could do this quick little walk together and that didn't work out. So let's go back to the drawing board. It's not like you try something once and it
Hmm.
works out.
Hmm.
So again, I think having that open mind of like, okay, we're in this chapter. We want to be a team getting through it. Let's try some things
Hmm.
that are realistic right now.
It's really like all encompassing. Like, and it sounds like any couple or relationship could take this and like, well, maybe you don't trade off on Saturdays and Sundays, but maybe you do something else. Like it's an evening or it's during the week because your work schedules are different. But it's carving out time for yourself, carving out time to communicate at the very least with your partner to check in,
Mhm.
realizing it's a season, And then those check-ins, those will change over time because then your little one's going to grow a little bit older, or now we're starting to venture out because we can get a babysitter, or so and so can come take, and now we can start, a date night. Maybe it's not once a week, maybe it's once a month or every 2 months, but like at least, you can get
Mhm.
back
Mhm.
into it during different seasons.
Absolutely. And I think with all of that, it's like getting, and this is, I mean, I would say, I say this to 100% of any of my prenatal postpartum clients, is getting in those moments, it feels all encompassing. When you're fighting with your partner, when you haven't slept in days, when you feel like everything is dirty in the house and you just can't get through it, is like, it can feel so heavy and so hopeless in those moments,
Mm,
and what is helpful is to take a step back and recognize, okay, this is one day, this is one chapter, and what is going to be realistic right now is going to look different down the road, like you said, right? This
mhm,
isn't like you are never going to have a date night again, or you're never going to be able to go to that, exercise class or go away with your friends on the weekend again. It's
mhm,
recognizing right now this is a different chapter, so what are the little things that I can build in that are going to help me feel connected and help me feel recharged to
mm,
get through it? Because again, I think, most couples, and I think the research supports this, that like the one of the most challenging times in a couple's life is that first year after baby's born.
mm,
Because there are so many dynamic shifts, there's so many demands on the relationship. And a lot of times people are prepping for like, oh, how am I going to feed baby? Are we going to do cloth diapers or regular diapers? What kind of crib? Like, but no one's like, how are we going to stay connected after baby's born? How am I going to remember that you're on my team and you're not this enemy in the house?
mm.
So I
It's
think
definitely
again,
not at the forefront of our minds. Yeah.
no. And I think coming back to that, having intent, putting intentional energy into the relationship, because if you don't, what's going to happen for most people is that they don't put any energy in because it's like, we're fine. I'll see you at the finish line. Like, I got stuff to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you're just like hoping you see each other at the finish line. Because I mean, all of this could be the same, but if you're not doing those check-ins and you really are just like, yeah, okay, well, this is just the season we're in, but he probably knows that too, or she probably knows that too. And
Mhm.
then as time goes on, those little things can start to wear down the relationship, even though, yeah, like, and the first year after having a baby is absolutely all encompassing, but it sadly does. I mean, good and maybe a little bit sad, but it doesn't stop there. Like
Mhm.
now we're like going back to work and little one's going to daycare, and now we have to figure out how we're going to do everything we've been doing, but also now I got to go to my full-time job too. Get
And
home.
someone's still got to cook dinner.
Yeah, someone's still got to cook dinner. That kid that's not napping well at daycare's got to go to bed early. Like, how does that all wind up where it is? But I guess those could be other conversations. Honestly, that's a one of the main reasons why I wanted to become a sleep consultant. I do this for the mental health of parents. I mean,
Mhm.
yes, I want babies to sleep their best and get great sleep, but there's lots of ways babies do that. But when I get to work with a family and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's so nice to have our evenings again. Like now we have time to connect." So there's a
Mhm.
time and a place for that if someone's looking for support with sleep, but like there are seasons when they're newborns where we're not worried about that at all. But when couples get that back, it's like, oh, now we can develop these routines now in the evenings with each other that we didn't literally had no time for before. So I love getting to do
Right.
that.
Right. Well, and I think, like you're saying, like there's not, parenthood doesn't get or stop having its challenges after first year. Like, well, I made it to the 1 year mark. Like, I guess it's
We
smooth
did it.
from here. Like, no, there's going to be other stressors. There's going to be other storms to weather. However, I think, if we see this chapter as almost like a way to start laying some of those foundational stones, right? And this is, also helpful for couples like before you have a baby or at any stage in your relationship where it's like, I mean, communication in a relationship, I would argue, is one of the most important things to work on.
Mhm.
When couples come to therapy because they're not having sex or they're not, something, they're fighting all the time. If we come back to that communication piece, is I think, there's a lot of assumptions that we make about other
Mhm.
people. There's
Mhm.
a lot of shoulds that like, and anytime we should, on ourselves, we typically just feel guilty, like, oh, I should have done better, I should have known, or if we should on other people, is we just start to feel resentful. He should have
Mm,
known that that's not the sleep sack we use on the baby, or he should have known that like he needed to be home by 5 o'clock, or she should have known that, this was really important to me and she just dropped the ball on it. So
mm,
again, I think back to this, you know, it, it doesn't necessarily, it's not like a one solution where like, hey, I've been able to share my feelings with you and now we're great.
yeah.
No, however, that's how we sort of start to feel connected. That's how we start to share. That's how we start to recognize, like, oh, I totally missed the mark. Like, I thought you were pissed off at me because of this thing, but turns out like you were feeling really stressed or alone in this one aspect.
Mm,
So I think again that like setting those foundational stones, because then when transition back to work happens and everybody's stressed again, it's like, okay, we can go back to the drawing board. What did we find helpful? What were the things like maybe we got to bring out those check-ins once a week again.
mm-hmm,
Maybe we need
mm-hmm,
to acknowledge that there's no solution. Like it does suck when, again, back in this society where it's like you, a lot of people make their lives work because they need two working parents. Now the kid is sick at daycare for the fifth time, and who's going to take that sick time?
mm-hmm,
So again, I
mm-hmm,
think there's always going to be those challenges, but it's not the fact that, I mean, every couple fights, but it's how you talk about it,
mm-hmm.
try to
Yeah,
resolve.
parenting aside, like these are really great tools for any relationship, but we just know that a new baby is going to shake things up. And if it's your first child, like no other shakeup you've ever experienced in a good way. Like there's so many
Mhm.
joys about it. And there's also so many joys in seeing your partner become a parent and like seeing them interact with the little one. And there can be moments of connection in some of that. But I think, I mean, the reason why we are doing this today is that we both see how it having a baby and the shift in priorities can really affect relationships if we're not careful. So
Mhm.
I love these pieces that you talk about with having realistic expectations. Even if that's not like, okay, we don't know what to expect. We've never had a baby before, but like realistically, we may not be doing the same things we've been doing for a little while, but we can
Mhm.
get back there or we can find new things. Um,
Right,
that's
right.
such a key element.
Mhm. Mhm.
Amazing. So you mentioned your website. So you have some handouts on here, or I maybe some also some books that you recommend, maybe
Yes.
because we can link to all that in the show notes for people if
Yeah, so it's stobiepsychology.com. So I will, yeah, I'll
okay.
send you the link so
We'll
you can
link to
look.
that. Yeah.
So again, and actually, if just bringing it up here, on my resources page, there's book recommendations. So there are a few, I mean, they're on many different books, that are helpful. There's a few couple therapy books, that are listed there as well, that can be helpful, especially for, if couples don't have, I mean, it's also common that couples don't have time to add in couples therapy where they're like, okay, this magical time that like no one can watch our
Yeah.
baby and we'll do therapy, so these might be some tools. A lot of them are turned into audiobooks because I don't know about you, but after becoming a parent, like that is pretty much the only way I get through a book is if I can listen to it.
Yes.
Watch.
Yes. Absolutely.
So again, and sometimes, if we're looking at other tools, like if you're feeling like, yeah, I just need something extra. I mean, again, couples therapy is a great place to start if that's accessible to you. The other piece would be looking into books. So again, Sue Johnson has a good one called Hold Me Tight. And, why I recommend this one often for couples is there's a lot of information. It's very attachment based, in terms of her approach. At the end of her chapters, there's sort of questions to guide, to talk about, certain things from childhood, like what, when you were a kid, what was a moment where you felt really connected or heard? Or it kind of goes through and has some prompting questions that you can discuss with your partner. So back to your point earlier, where you're like, what if we don't know the answer, what to say? We're like, meh. Having questions that you can think about, reflect on, and talk about together can be really
Mm,
helpful.
mm.
The other section on my website in the resources, there's handouts and other resources. The previous podcast that I did with you is also linked there.
Hmm.
Um, the State of the Union is there. And then there's a couple other one on self-care strategies for new parents, which might be helpful, relaxation. And then there's also communication tips for couples. So this is a handout when I did more couples therapy. This is something that, we would use together. It's just kind of like a guideline of some general points about, how to improve communication, in the couple. So again, all of those are available there. I believe
Amazing.
PDFs.
I'm going to link to those in the show notes so people can just click and go. Because that to me, like telling someone like, hey, make sure you communicate and have realistic expectations. And you're like, okay,
Right. You're like, great
what does that
buzzwords.
mean? What am I
Yeah.
supposed to say when I'm communicating? So prompting questions and things like that are just so helpful. So that's amazing. You have all those on your
Yeah.
website.
Absolutely. And the State of the Union is there as well. And these aren't things that I have created. These are things that other clinicians have created that are referenced in the handout as well. And again, there's so much that's available online. So if, you find you are struggling with your partner, again, I think to your point of having, because I don't know about you, but at the end of the day, when I was like talking in sentences, like that's going to be hard for me right now. Like I don't even know if I ate
Right.
you know and again, this is why we put the relationship on the back burner. So I think this
Mhm.
part, if there's any any kind of nugget that you can take from this, is just making it realistic for where you are right now and recognizing this is not forever. And
Yeah.
so whether it's listening to a podcast like this, finding something online, asking a few questions, I think that's
Talking to other parents at parent and baby groups, because like these are the things that people don't really talk about. Not
Mhm.
that you need to be to a stranger like, so how's your relationship? But
Right.
I don't know, whenever I would like maybe bring something up that I thought was really great that my partner did, or something really frustrating, there's always one or two that are like, oh my God, I know, or like, yeah,
Mhm.
it's so great when they do that. So like just knowing that there's other people also going through things, not that we want everyone to struggle, but like some of those things are good too. But it just helps you feel like, okay, like it's not just us, like this is normal, but we should be maybe working on it or paying attention to it.
Right. Well, I think there's so much power in, and I think this is why group prenatal classes are great. Any like parent and baby drop-in,
Yeah.
any of like the family resource centers that have drop-ins, like I've always
Sometimes there's fitness
recommended.
classes that you can meet
Yes,
others at with baby.
absolutely. Or
Yeah.
library groups. Like I think it is so important because I think back to the earlier point where this, I guess, could be a whole other episode too, where it's like
Yeah.
in our culture is we get so lost in what we think is normal, right? Because I don't know about you, but when I went on Instagram in 3 a.m. in the morning when I couldn't sleep and saw like the mom who's baking pies or the one who's all together or showing their house,
Uh,
and I'm like, how are they doing that? So I
yeah.
think this part where what we are so lacking when we lose that community of real life humans is that sort of normalcy, right? Feeling validated, like, okay, it's not a me problem. Like
Yeah.
it's not like I'm a failure. This shit is hard and it's
Yeah.
messy. And sometimes you don't have the answers. And some weeks you feel disconnected from your partner.
Hmm.
Some weeks you feel like a crap mom, but I think being in those groups, that normalizing experience can be so validating because you're absolutely
Mm.
right when you're like, oh my gosh, like this happened again. And if you hear someone else be like, oh, me too, you know, that can be that little spark that gets us
Yeah.
day,
Yes. Yeah.
and I know like we obviously don't have time to talk about it today, but this can be so true with physical intimacy too, right? It's
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
no one rolls up to the baby group to be like, so is anyone having sex with their partner lately? Like,
Right.
oh, you don't, but there's all these sort of background pieces where, there's all this disconnect, all this shift in the relationship.
Mm.
So
Hmm.
again, I think, I'm a big, believer in having group support. And for some people, that is online. Like for some people,
Hmm.
that's how it's accessible to them, but I think like having someone that can normalize your experience is so helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Whether that's, a counselor, a therapist, a group,
Mhm.
another parent.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. I think the education groups too, right? Because I think that prenatal group can be so important where it's like, you know, here's obviously like the tangible information that you need, but also knowing that other parents are scared. Other
Yeah.
parents are like, we don't really
That's
know.
one of the biggest reasons why people come to our group. It's like, I want to meet other people. I don't know anybody else who's pregnant, or like, I just want to know people in my neighborhood, or, and then you hear somebody be excited about something or
Mm,
is struggling with something and they're like, oh my God, me too. Isn't that heartburn the worst? Like, and it
mm,
doesn't make your heartburn any better, but it makes you feel better that you're not broken. This too shall pass, and other people are
absolutely.
struggling too. Well, Madeline, thank you so much. It's been a really wonderful conversation. Hope to have you back again because I know we can have lots more, but I think this is going to be really helpful for people who are expecting, trying to conceive in the trenches in it right now, or maybe thinking about doing it again. None of this is like would ever go stale. Like these are really helpful for relationships, but particularly if we're busy with a baby, we got to think about it just a little bit more. So thanks so much.
Yes, you're very welcome, and we'll chat again soon.
Yay. If you're looking for more information or support along your parenting journey, check out birthbabysleep.ca. That's where you're going to find prenatal classes, postpartum and new baby resources, and sleep support during the childhood years. Lastly, but certainly not least, if you got something out of this episode or our show in general, leaving a rating or a quick review goes a really long way to helping others find us. So please consider leaving one. That's all for now. I'm Ashley Cooley, and we'll see you back here next time.